we're really looking at downtown Doraville and how it's changed. And you've seen the photo before of what the old Main Street used to look like. You know what your downtown kind of looks like in the middle there now, the municipal center. And I assume all of you are familiar with the plans for the new downtown that are really much more urban, have more attention to gathering spaces, much more sustainable. And so the question that we are really asking is, now that the city is moving forward with a new downtown, how might the streets and properties near it expand the new downtown's impact, frankly, expand its visibility? I think the new downtown plan is terrific, but it really doesn't have a presence on Buford Highway or on New Peachtree Road. You know, how might redevelopment around it in the next 25 years just further expand, improve, do all sorts of great things for Doraville. So what we have been doing is looking at, we have 6 teams, 2 per site, and each team is focused on a major street. So we have a team in the red in the plan here are looking at really restoring the old Main Street or New Peachtree Road and connecting to the new downtown, to MARTA, and across I-285. We have a group in blue right below that looking at Buford Highway, both sides of the street. And we'll get, 2 proposals for the Buford Highway Farmers Market, because that's an important property. We also have a team in orange that is looking at the southern end of Buford Highway, and again, parcels on both sides of the road. And then we also have 2 teams working in the green site, which is centers on Shallowford Road. And the teams, these are the sites as I gave them to them, but I also allowed the teams, if they wanted to expand their sites because they thought it made sense, they were free to do so. So they didn't really, most of them, hardly any of them really stuck exactly to these boundaries. The studio, this is an urban design studio. And so it's pairing graduate students who are in a post-professional, most of them have an architecture background, and now are pursuing an specifically urban design degree. And the teams are also paired with students in our post-professional high performance buildings master's degree. So what we've done to kind of encourage the students to get them a little bit of a prompt and help them move quickly is each team has a different what if question and a different performance target, at least. So for each site, you'll see very, very different proposals, so that we are hoping that that's really going to be useful to the city to sort of help see the capacity for change and decide, if any of these ideas are things that you would really want to pursue. So the what if questions are all what if in 25 years? And then it's sort of, what if half of Doraville's residents no longer needed private cars? What if Doraville redefined ethnic businesses and ethnic neighborhoods? What if half of Doraville's jobs were part of the creative TV film economy, given assembly? What if Doraville leveraged climate change as an asset, not just sort of this scary thing? Now, at the same time, each team is working with their high performance building teammate on various performance targets. And you'll hear a little bit about what they're looking at. It ranges from walkability and outdoor thermal comfort, air quality and noise pollution, sustainable energy systems of a wide variety of types, and as well as indoor daylighting performance, stormwater harvesting and flood protection, and on-site food production. So lots of different things that we're kind of throwing at the students and now letting them toss back to you to see, what do you think is really important? What would be, what are good ideas? What are not so good ideas? What are bad ideas? We really would greatly appreciate your feedback. Please add comments or questions in the chat if there isn't time for everyone to speak. With 6 teams, I've told the teams that I will be brutal about only allowing them to present for 8 minutes. I'll admit we had an academic review on Monday where we let them present for more than twice that much time. But I've asked them to condense. And then I hope to have 10 minutes for each team to get some feedback from all of you. But again, if we run out of time on the feedback, please make a comment in the chat. And finally, I just want to make sure that, recognize this is hypothetical student work, and it's focused on urban design and high performance buildings. This class does not estimate costs. This is not a real estate development class. The students are familiar. They've taken a class in real estate development, but this class that's not the focus, and there just isn't time in one semester to get into all of the sort of financial and all of the practical things. We've tried to really, I think, balance and find a balance between being bold, but at the same time, not unrealistic. So you'll have to let us know what you think. And with that, I am going to stop sharing, and I am going to ask Raj and Toshi and Chinmay to share their screen. Raj, I can't hear you.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Raj. I have Tusi and Chinmay presenting with me. Uh, so the site that we are working on is to the south of Doraville, which is the Peachtree Road. So first we identified 3 major streets. We have a Mata line which goes to this site. We also have railway. So on the east we have the Buford, we have Shaloford and New Peachtree. We also identified important landmarks on site. That is the new downtown development, the elementary school, Asian Square. This was this site section where we realized there was a lot of topography that happens. So there's a difference of around 50 feet from Asian Square to Flowers Park. So the question that we are trying to answer is, what if in 25 years, half of Doraville's population no longer needed private cars? So what we started doing was we started listing down how can we promote walking as a preferred mode of transportation. And some things that we identified was, first was better pedestrian infrastructure, variety of mixed use amenities, so give people a reason to walk, more transportation options, green spaces, affordable housing. Uh, so at the same time, we were also finding out how can we promote. So some of the issues that we identified on site was there was no connection from the Beaufort to the Shaloford. There were a lot of vacant lots on site, and there were no active users or active programs on site. Again, some of the issues, like there were a lot of accidents which happen on site, and a lot of jaywalking is also happening on this side because there is no sidewalk, and the city's vision, like where the Peachtree and the Shaloford meets. I think the city is also imagining to figure out a junction as well. So to answer these questions, we started coming up with our urban design strategies.
Yeah, so we had different urban design strategies. So, like Raj said, that we identified these three major axes on our side. That was Beaufort, Shalford, and Peachtree. So, first, the urban strategy was to connect the axis of the Shalford leading to the New Peachtree, and that is sort of connecting to the northern part, that is the Marta station and the downtown. The second strategy was to continue the axis of the New Peachtree, and so, like we identified earlier in the problem, that Raj said that we were sort of finding the whole junction where the New Peachtree and Shalford meet. It was sort of a complicated junction. So, just to simplify that, one of the strategies we came up with was diverging that axis, which sort of led us to the creation of this central plaza, or the central, highly public space for the city. And the third one that we identified was the two major public places on our side, which was one was the Asian Square and the Flowers Park. Although we know the Flowers Park is going to go away, but according to the ULI, they are sort of trying to reimagine the park. So we thought it would be a great idea to have some sort of a physical connection or a spine that is, connecting these two major points of a site. And the third one was we were looking how we can sort of break these entire larger blocks, and have some sort of a secondary connection.
Okay, you're halfway through your time.
Yeah, yeah,
Move quickly.
yeah. So this was again how the New Peachtree could come together and meet, like, we could establish connections from the assembly to the downtown. And another one was how we can connect Beaufort to the assembly. So we thought of coming up with foot over bridges or some sort of physical connections that can extend from a site to the other part of the plot. And one of the, like I said, we were sort of targeting the what if scenario was the after 25 years, how can we make it more car free. So after 25 years we were having a vision of having these autonomous pods, sort of AV on that could run on the entire site. And we sort of established certain points where these we could have certain stops for the public, like for example the gateway, the Asian Square. We also have like an elementary school on the site, and the central plaza and the Flowers Park. So our autonomous vehicle, like all these micro mobilities can run throughout the site. And yeah, so we were looking at how we can divide these streets into car oriented streets. So we try to limit the car oriented as much as we can. So one axis was the Shalford, the second was the Carlight street, how we can sort of not do away completely with cars, but like we would have certain accesses for these micro mobilities. So those could be car light, and then eventually looking at all the other zones which could be car free zones. And yeah, this was a master plan. So I'm not sure if it's really visible, but yeah, so we sort of try to have higher densities facing the Beaufort, the Shalford, and the Peachtree. Whereas if you go and see the internal, where there are like single family housing typologies, so those could become like a very neighborhood on our site, wherein we could have like this mixed use facing on the Beaufort and the Shalford. And this street also that is leading from the Asian Square to the Flowers Park would be completely car free street. So we to make the whole pedestrian walkability more pleasurable, we thought of having this bioswale that sort of runs along our site.
2 minutes left.
Yeah, then we were looking at how we can make our neighborhood more walkable and more bikeable, as well as more connectivity in terms of all these other micro mobilities. Yeah, this was just like the land use plan, mixed use with single family housing combination. Yeah, these are all the amenities that were sort of laid out on our site. Yeah, just the side sections.
Yeah, so this is the section that they're looking at. So there's a side drop of around 10 feet. So we want to accommodate that by giving like a
One
sunken
minute.
courtyard. Yeah. So we'll just run through the massing options. So like we have higher density on the Beaufort and the Shalford, but lower density inside the
Neighborhood. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so we were just exploring some like how we can emphasize the plaza that we were talking
Let's go
about.
to Chiang Mai. Jump to Chiang
Yeah,
Mai now.
yeah,
I think it is important to say that your neighborhood in the middle of the block is a car-free neighborhood. No parking for those
Yes.
units in the
yeah.
middle. Those are and let's just jump to okay, Chiang Mai.
Yes, hi. So as we have the Kafri neighborhood, the one thing that is very important is the urban heat island effect that happens due to the cityscapes right now, due to all the concretes. And therefore, we moved ahead and we saw how the shadow patterns are along the New Peachtree Road, let's say Buford Road. And what we came across was that we can actually study this and have our central plaza covered with trees. Next slide, please. So when we studied that, we also knew that what are the radiations, how the solar radiation is affected on the site. And these are few images where we can see that on our side, there are a few places which are very much exposed to sun, which are not comfortable while walking. So we are trying to mitigate that with various multiple design options, which will be coming forward soon. But apart from that, we also studied of how even the internal areas or the rooms are affected due to sun and these both studies will define our comfortability or thermal comfort. Next, please. Yeah. So one of the ways that we are trying to also harness this solar energy is through solar power or the PV yield that we say. And due to this, I've just shown two examples of, let's say, one is a Tesla car and one is a very small car with a small battery. If we imagine to have the automobile pod, the which will run throughout the New Peachtree Road or connect two places, we can use this solar energy to charge these vehicles. And by our preliminary tests, what we have found out is that we can charge those vehicles more than 10,000 times, and it can have more than 200 trips across the street. Next, please. Yes, also, apart from solar energy, we are trying to use the whole topography of our site to our advantage by looking at how we can utilize the slopes for the stormwater trap, where we can store the stormwater and use it for different multiple purposes. As you can see right now here, we have formulated few options and identified few locations for the same. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So you guys have a couple of questions for the audience.
Yeah.
Raj, why don't you read them off, or Toshi?
Yeah, so the first question was, what everyday amenities and facilities do you believe are currently lacking in Doraville? And what are the key concerns and expectations of the community regarding the same facilities, basically revolving around everyday life in Doraville? And a comment on the master plan on how do you envision the future development of Doraville, and like what role do you see our project playing in that vision? Like, but basically commenting on our master plan. And yeah,
I mean, I think even just maybe start with, can you imagine in 25 years, do you think we'll have some car-free housing would be viable? The students looked quite a lot at a project in Tempe, Arizona that called Cul-de-sac that is, it's quite amazing how much more affordable everything becomes and how much more you can really deal with the urban heat island effect if you go car free. So they didn't entirely go car free, but I think that was a really major part of what these guys were doing. So let's get some feedback.
should I go to the master plan?
Sure, or the questions. I mean, yeah, we'll just take
Yeah,
questions or comments
yeah.
from anyone who would like. We've got about 10 minutes for questions.
Well, I'll jump in. My name is Matthew Oppenheimer. With Halpern Enterprises. We own several of the shopping centers up and down Buford Highway, and I'm also on the board of the Chambly-Doraville CID. Very interesting to see some of the concepts that y'all have come up with, and am interested to see some of the different ideas from the different groups. I think it's hard for me to imagine a car-free environment because my vision of that area is so car heavy, and particularly at the speeds the cars move on Buford Highway. It, and I don't have a fully formed idea on all of this, nor do I necessarily have a question. But it's an interesting idea. I think, sort of having density up along Buford Highway and then maybe having the car-free living and sort of connectivity in the areas off of Buford Highway that are a layer or two removed from Buford Highway certainly makes sense. I will say that our experience in the area is that there are quite a number of people that live in the area that sort of live a car-free lifestyle, if you will, and are walking up and down the corridor, whether on sidewalks or you see footpaths where there aren't sidewalks. But I don't know. All that to say, I think it's very interesting concepts. I think one of the challenges, as you laid out that beautiful master plan, is I just think about, one of the properties that plan was laid on top of is one of our shopping centers. And we know the gentleman that owns the property to the left of us isn't interested in selling his property, and the guy to the left of him isn't interested in selling his. And so it works conceptually, but the practical challenges of getting private property owners to collaborate on something like this is really a pretty monumental task.
Thank you. Great points. Who else? Steph says car-free depends a lot on what MARTA does in the future. Do you want to elaborate, Steph? What do you think MARTA needs to do?
Might I make a comment on the MARTA thing?
Yeah.
After riding MARTA for years, I do notice there's not much security. The cars are sometimes not that clean, and I think people are a bit intimidated by riding it. For one, at certain times of the day, it's very, very crowded, and that's the trains. But as they get over into the more northern suburbs, of course, they thin out. I think to promote ridership, they got to really do a good facelift and make it more inviting. Take a little bit more interest in prep of the stations themselves to get people over there. The buses, they move fairly freely through the city, but it doesn't seem that the ridership is up as much as it could be.
Good points. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else want to just, unmute yourself and speak up?
Hi, this is Will. I enjoyed seeing how you all created the density along the major arteries and then almost creating like that haven car light, car free center in the middle, which allows that, strolling along to the different areas of your master plan. So I really enjoyed thinking through that, that you all thought through that, as well as, I did have a question. How tall are the buildings that would face the Buford Highway? Was it like 6 to 10 stories or?
Yeah, so right now we imagine them to be mid-rises, like around 4-5 stories high.
Okay. Thank you. Great job.
Is that consistent with the new zoning that Doraville has implemented along Buford Highway?
It is. I mean, it's part of the T5 as long as it's mostly commercial. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just checking.
Yeah, most of it allows up to 6 stories, and a couple places it can go up to 20.
Are we? We think with the airport we could get all the way up to 20.
20 in theory, I guess. Depends on where
Yeah. So the students were asking about really everyday amenities and facilities. I mean, this part of the city does not has some residents, not very many. But what other any sense of particular amenities and facilities that are really would be needed to support more of a residential population?
If I can make a comment, this is Lorraine Caribbean. I live in Northwoods, which is on the
Yeah, we
the
know.
southeast side, okay? But there's always been a discussion for the past 30 years that I've lived here or so, of walkability into Buford Highway, between the houses and all that come up, backing the commercial areas. So we wouldn't have to walk blocks and blocks and blocks to get all the way to the end of Chestnut and Buford Highway, that we would have more accessibility through the whole community to Buford Highway, which would be really great. That way we could go up and we could be at a restaurant in just a few minutes almost.
We do have another team that is working more on that, on the others, on around, that includes that border with Northwoods. That was not part of this team's site, but we do have another team working on that area.
Using MARTA a lot, not every day, but enough to get in and out of the city quite a few times to avoid the 85 corridor traffic. If there are other MARTA stops that are much more pleasant to get on and off of. There's artwork, they're clean. I've noticed that some lines tend to be a lot cleaner coming out of Dunwoody for some reason than the ones coming up into Doraville. I hear that comment a lot. So for elderly people, and I would say men and women both, to feel less intimidated by the opportunity for that train system would be something that you really need to work on with the transit authority.
Terrific. Thanks. I think we've got time for one or two more comments on this one. Should we go back to that master? Let's go back to the master plan, Raj. And
Yeah.
And also, these performance metrics, to really working on urban heat island, working on regreening. We thought that seemed pretty important to that just everyday life in this part of town. Any reactions?
I totally agree. The more trees we can have, the better off we are. Little parks and places to sit, I see Chambly's putting in little, places to sit all along New Peachtree Road with little artwork, and it's just so pleasant, even though we've got a big train going right beside it. It's just a pleasant atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
This is Sarah Bensford with Microlife. That was my takeaway in looking at this plan, is that it when we were doing our walk in Doraville, the thing that really struck me is it just felt like tons of concrete. It felt, if there was green, it was hard to notice. I'm sure it was there somewhere, but just seeing the real attention to getting some green back in there in the form of street trees and little pockets of green space, I think that's a great part of this plan.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I am now going to ask Raj to stop sharing his screen and Omkar to share his. So this next team is working on the exact same site, that really centered on Shallowford Road, but they have a different what if question and a different set of performance metrics.
Hello all, I'm Mumkar. I have Rajat and Chinmay with me on this site. So the scenario which we were tackling is, what if in 25 years, half of the Doraville's jobs were part of the creative film economy? When we talk about film economy, the first thing which comes to our mind is the assembly. So definitely assembly has a lot of influence on our side. But we have observed that assembly provides spaces for the big production studios. And when we are trying to create a creative complex or a creative spaces in our site, we would like to have given opportunities for the smaller production houses to come and start their journey of the film industry. Recently, we have also came to know that Tyler Perry has stopped his $850 million project of creating a big studio space. That is because the new AI and all the technologies which are coming up are they just require very small space to create some beautiful masterpieces through these. And that's when we realize that when we are talking about a vision for Doraville, we want the people to come here to collaborate with each other, to celebrate the great ethnicities which the neighborhood has, and to have a good work life scene in this neighborhood. So this is our urban framework plan. So with the circles, we try to show the influences which are already happening on the site. So we have Assembly, we have Marta, we have the downtown Doraville, which is coming up, and the Northwoods. So we would like to stitch all these places together and create a good space for the community where they can come together, they can have their celebrations, and then they can invite people to come here and to join them for their different occasions. So we analyzed the existing scenarios. So we saw that the parcel which we are looking at has very less connectivity. So we'd like to we'll try to create more connectivity through this. Connecting Beaufort to the Shalford and the Peachtree will be one of the very important points. But again, because of that, we will connect the Northwoods to the neighborhood Doraville. We also observe the open spaces which are there, the parking lots which are very dominant. But through our proposal, what we'll try to do is try to organize these spaces so that it can have a better use for it. And the current land use plan or the zoning which is already there is pretty heavy. So we'll try to frame it and make it more usable for the community.
Yes, so for looking at the performance metrics, we also identified two locations, possible locations, for these two performances, and these are the anaerobic digestion and the solar generation. So anaerobic digestion is basically the biofuel plant. Our idea is to take all the waste from the buildings, the upcoming buildings, and utilize it to generate energy. And these are the two possible locations which are just besides the railway track. And our target for that is for the PVL, we are thinking of having 25% of the total consumption of the new buildings through the solar panels. And through anaerobic digestion, we are thinking of 20% of the energy to be generated. Next slide. So for our preliminary results, we tried to see what are the EUI, the energy use intensity, how much energy does the building take to run. We have considered for now all the commercial buildings, hotels, and retail outspaces for the first phase of our study. And of course, for the second phase, we'll be also studying the residential part. But our preliminary study says that whatever energy that we require, we are still yet to prove that we can give the 25% of the energy that is generated from the solar. We can see that in the next slide. So next slide says that by giving the rooftop solar panels and also the sites that I showed earlier, by giving a roof like a solar farm over there, we can generate around 5 to 10% of the energy that is required to run the entire building. But this can be changed by further tweaking our own design standards and other things. For the case of anaerobic digestion, what we are thinking is we can actually see that I have considered 10,000 people that will be working around that nexus, and these people would generate a waste of around 2,000 tons. If we even manage to divert 1,000 tons of the storage, we could actually potentially generate energy of 500,000, which could provide around 20%, which is our target. So I think for anaerobic digestion, we are meeting our target, but for the solar part, we'll be studying more for that. Thank you.
So we came on these performance targets of harnessing energy because we realized that there will be a lot of waste which will be happening in the assembly because there are large production houses which are coming up, and there will be a lot of food waste which we assumed. And because of that, we came on this conclusion where we can use these to produce energy. Yeah. So these
So we start, so like, yeah, so
are,
like we looked at all these priorities, and what we took away was that what would be our design strategies to combat all these targets and priorities. So what we started doing was that first we are proposing a creative nexus in the middle of our site, where the new Peachtree Street and Shallowford Street connect, which will house our art and entertainment center, which will complement the assembly, which will bring in more tourism and more public from all over the city, where like which will sort of be a transformative space all over the year, which will have ice skating and weekly markets, movie nights. Then what we are also doing is that we are proposing the Shallowford Street as our main event street, which will all year round house parades and events like Dragon Con, Comic Con, and which will essentially become our walk of fame, where when you are walking, you are the star. uh,
Four
then what
minutes
we were
left.
doing was that yes, what we are also proposing is that the complex that is along the Mada Lane is going to be our creative complex, which will have mixed use developments, which will have recording studios, offices, and restaurants and cafes, which will provide a space for all the artists and all the workers to hang out during their lunch hours and after work hours. Uh, Also, what we are proposing is that along the Mata lane, we are proposing a trail which will eventually connect to the path 400 and the Shambly Mata, Brookhaven Mata towards the south, and the proposed Peachtree Greenway. Uh, to connect this trail to our Shallowford event street, we are also proposing a cafe street. Yeah.
So in the master plan, this is the master plan. We have Buford here. So our entry point to the Doraville, we have created some kind of massing, which will give an understanding or diversion to enter our site. We are keeping the Asian Square as it is and the elementary school, but we are retrofitting the elementary school and trying to propose a new film school, which will be in coordination with the assembly and the upcoming neighborhood. Are all the residential spaces are zoned here along the Shallowford, and along the Peachtree we are trying to create this creative complex which will house offices and residential apartment lofts which will be affordable ones. This is how the entire massing looks like. We have tried to create a lot mass on the Peachtree and the Shallowford Street because that will give an enclosure to these streets and create a safe neighborhood. These are how the views we're trying to envisioning. So this is along the Mata line. So this is the trail which we are trying to propose, which will have these play areas in between and a complete trail of for the pedestrians and the bicycler movement. This is our the creative nexus, a central green space which will have cinema nights and the flea markets. This is how we are envisioning the event street, where as Doraville has different ethnicities, they have their different cultures with them, and this event street will showcase these cultures, which will again invite people to come to Doraville and be a part of it.
All
These are
right, your time is up. Just wrap up real fast.
So these are some more views of it, of the spaces and the streets. And this is how we went with the phasing plan. So we tried to create these two spaces in the phase one, the creative nexus and the creative gateway. And then we'll move towards the office spaces and the residential units coming up. Thank you.
All right. And do you guys have a question for?
Definitely. So when we talk about creative economy, everybody have a different vision for this or different perspective on it. We would like to hear more about what your views on creative economy is and how we can create more such spaces or more such opportunities for the people who are residing in Doraville and attract people from all around the city to come to Doraville and be a part of it.
Great. Why don't you go back to your master plan? Or the massing, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. Who wants to jump in?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
So we are
Go
tackling
ahead.
creative economy, and everybody has a different vision for creative economy. So we're trying to understand what your vision is about this creative economy.
Well, like any of the other city hubs like Decatur or whoever, walkability of things that interest the multitudes. In other words, boutique shops and art galleries and, you know, piano teachers, and it's just a whole conundrum of different things because we have a very eclectic community here. And more advertising and opportunities for everybody to know about all of the foods that are available. I mean, we have, I don't know the name of it, but we've got a new ice cream place that is absolutely to die for, but it's stuck back in a shopping center, and unless someone tells you about it, you don't know about it.
Okay, yeah.
I'd be interested to hear from Solomon King at Assembly about the students' idea of making much smaller TV and film production spaces, more for sort of startups. Does that sound like competition to you or complementary? We thought
Complementary.
it would maybe be complementary, but
Complementary all the way. We're built for both big and small, but not too terribly small per se. We've got big stage space and more on the big end of budgets, but which that leaves a whole barrage of indies and A and B movies, along with tier 1, 2, and 3s. The sky's the limits on that. And regardless of how that sounds, I have worked on those myself, and I have still made really good, matter of fact, not only great money during those, and I've had great experiences with new people trying to figure out their craft. I mean, it's been a fun ride for the 30 plus years. I'm just going to say 20 because it makes me sound old. Even 20 makes me sound old. But anyway, long story short, that would be a great complimentary. And to those of you that need editing and stuff like that, you still have that readily available over in Brookhaven, where our headquarters is. We've got 4 editing bays over there for a community like that needs to have that special equipment that is just so hard to get to. So we are a stone throw away. That would be a great thing.
awesome. What kinds of, let's just say what kinds of spaces or amenities do you think make that kind of small scale space work? I mean, on the one hand, my husband's an artist, and I know he needs cheap space. And he needs pretty much windowless space. He's a photographer. He can use a lot of dark space. It doesn't have to be sun filled. But what would you recommend?
Eclectic facades, storefronts, stuff like that, yet all within the same. You've drove down our Assembly Boulevard and you've seen how we had the 4 different types of facades. We're going to have complementary facades across from 3 of them, but obviously the Tribeca has the park in that area, and which these guys that are learning from you now, they're going to figure out a way to create environmental sustainability as well as HGOR has done over here with the watershed. That we brought water above the ground that wasn't above the ground, that drops in on us literally. And we've had such heavy rains in the past so many months that it's handled it beautifully. It would hold the 100-year flood and then some, and it receded beautifully, filtered out through the property and the natural landscapes. And then we've got natural retention ponds that have ecosystems that are still filtering that out. So stuff like that, that also cools our grounds. It cools our air to have that water there as well. And if you play it right, you have kids playing through fountains and stuff like that. So it creates a family atmosphere, which that is the one thing. If you want to create a good scape, it's also got to be family friendly. and not, your typical 20s and up, to where it's a playground for them. You got to bring the little ones in as well.
Great. Thank you.
Well,
I'm wondering what the city and residents think about the idea of, it's not, they're not saying get rid of the elementary school, but that since elementary school is during the day, film school might be at night, and yet you might have to add, renovate and add some additional space. What do you think of that idea?
I'll jump in. I love the idea. I mean, as in microlife and in us utilizing space, the idea of being able to use a space constantly instead of it only having one purpose is very appealing. And so how do we morph or evolve during the day? It is one thing during certain hours, and then it evolves into something else at other hours, allowing more use and a lot more use for one building versus it just being deemed as one thing. So I enjoy that idea. I think a multitude, I mean, you even look at churches and other institutions that have that space that's only used once a week, can be incorporated into that idea within this space.
Great. What about those sites for the utilities, for really putting in the anaerobic digesters, for putting in a solar panel farm? One of those is already a Georgia Power site, so it seemed a reasonable idea that I think a good idea that the students came up with. But and I've seen a little bit in the chat that, turning waste energy, but also waste wood products or sets and props, all of that could be turned into energy.
Is there like a minimum size requirement for sites like that? I know for like solar, you need a fairly large site, but for the anaerobic stuff, I mean, what's the minimum where it actually kind of makes it worthwhile?
Most of the ones I've seen are several, but they're like in big cities. Usually, if you just did one, they're not very big. But Chinmay, do you know? Or you're going to have to find out.
At least,
I can get back with
we would need around,
specifics.
like we would at least need a size of 200 by 200 feet block.
Really? For the digesters? Okay.
Yeah, but like since it can be accommodated within the ground plane, so the higher levels can be used
Yeah,
for the
actually, the
purposes.
furnace can go underground.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. All right, we are just about out of time with these guys. Any closing comments?
I have one. When thinking about these sustainable energy stuff, let's try to go from the very end of the sustainable, such as, I know there's not going to be any windmills, but solar panels seems to be the hot topic. They have to have somewhere to go when their life is done, and we don't want to keep putting things back in the earth that were manipulated to do, good things, but then turn out to be bad things at the end of their life. So we need to find a way to continually to make those good things, and perhaps they can be stripped, torn down, refurbished, and put back together, or something like that.
Great point.
Yeah, surely we'll definitely look into that. That's a really good point. What can be done after the lifespan of solar panels?
Yeah, make a lifespan 100 years instead of 30, or even longer.
Well, we're already
Sure.
thinking about and discussing that in 25 years, solar panels will probably be able to be transparent, multiple colors. They can be used more like a film that you walk under, so as part of the event space. So
and the technology will be taken farther to where they will last longer and will be able to be
Yeah.
recycled.
Yeah.
I think
Yes,
we can assume that, pretty. 25 years gives you some flexibility. So
Yes, it does. But But we have
wishful thinking, but
we have to start planning now in order to get to that 25
Yes.
year.
Yeah.
exactly.
Sure.
All right, great. Thank you, Chinmay, Rajat, and Omkar. I'll ask you to stop sharing your
Thank you.
screen and ask
Thank
Elvin
you.
to share hers.
Hello. So, hello, my name is Alham, and we look through the north part of Beaufort Highway. Our vision is, our what if is like, what if in 25 years, half of Doraville residents no longer need private cars? So we went through our site and kind of identified some issues that we can address according to being more car-light, car-free. The first issue that we kind of identified is that we noticed that to residential neighborhoods around Beaufort Highway is kind of disconnected, and the Beaufort Highway and Interstate Highway is like cutting through Doraville. The other issue we could notice is that though all parcels along the Beaufort highways, like commercials, ethnic restaurants, there's no good sidewalks. There are like broken, no not enough trees to shed shadows, and not public space that you can kind of rest. And the other issue that we notice is that there's no enough density. It's like scattered, different size of parcels, different size of buildings, mostly there are like the majority of parcels are like parkings. So our big idea is that how we can think about Beaufort Highway as a connector, as spine, connecting all these residential neighborhoods all together to Farmers Market, New Downtown, and Marta. So we go through our opportunities that we kind of find in our site. Our imagination about Beaufort Highway in 25 years align with being more car-like, car-free, was to kind of retrofit Beaufort Highway in a slow traffic boulevard, extending street networks toward the neighborhood, and reduce the speed of cars in this part, at least in this part of the Beaufort Highway. And other opportunity that we look through was to extend Peachtree Creek Greenway that is already proposed to pass through our site, connecting to downtown and Marta. So we were thinking, what if we extend this greenway as a pedestrian bikeable way to connect all these neighborhoods around Beaufort Highway and extend this green network of pedestrian ways through the neighborhoods. And the other opportunity that we look is that to add more density toward along the Beaufort Highway, to propose more mixed-use development and commercial developments, activating the highway frontage zones, and kind of to give more density to the neighborhood. So our urban framework came out like this: to see Beaufort Highway as a boulevard, green, slow traffic, and to extend this green network of bikeable, pedestrian-friendly streets toward the neighborhood, and more density. Here, I'm going to mention that as we are like looking through this what if, that more than half of Doraville residents are like, they don't need private car anymore. We look at parking potentials around our site, and our argument will be that we are like not going to provide like a huge parking lots anymore, probably like stack parkings somewhere in our side, but we are like proposing car light, car free. So our design ideas are goes around, again, a high slow traffic boulevard, car like neighborhood, and green trail connection through the
3
neighborhood.
minutes left.
Yeah, I'm going to just cut it. That our inspiration was this super black idea: keep cars out of the blocks, and the inside of the neighborhood would be like more pedestrian and car light. So here's our master plan. We show here how we look at the density. Further, we will see the massing also. In this master plan, we show this new downtown plan and Lotus and Camilo development also, all adjacent to our site. And here we can see that we are proposing to extend the screen way toward other neighborhoods. Murmay.
The urban framework and the major move of proposing the Buford Highway as a slow traffic boulevard. We've developed 3 street types. The first one being the Buford, and currently the Buford is a seven-lane fast traffic boulevard, fast traffic highway that we're imagining to be a boulevard with only 2 lanes for cars and 2 lanes for public transport. The rest of it is pedestrian, where we have more spill out for retail areas. It gets a lot greener, and it grows on the Peachtree Creek Greenway Trail and has bike lanes along it. Next.
1 minute.
Yeah. Next. So this is how we imagining the Buford to be, more of people, more of life, more of public space, and less of cars. Next. The second street that we're imagining, that we're planning on, are the internal streets, which again have more of retail spill out, more of pedestrian area than for cars. And the third street is completely pedestrian. This is our imagination of what the farmers market should be, rather than like what it is right now, a big chunk of building block. We're imagining it to be more of like human scale and have this huge public area, which becomes a great public space for the site, which is adaptive in nature, where it can be a retail spill out, maybe a yoga spot associated with the offices. And these are the underpass that we're trying to connect from this part of the site to the farmers market area and furthermore. And these are few examples of how we are imagining it to be. And this is the land use that we plan on executing, where T6, the most urban, and the areas where the buildings would be higher, are near the downtown and near the highways. And the rest are either T4 and T5, and T3 is only where there are already smaller areas of development and low in height. Next. And the phasing is strategically to develop the Beaufort, the parcels along the Beaufort area first, because currently most of them are all parking and the commercial strip malls are behind. So we want to develop this part first and let the retail people take over it and develop the second phase. For here, we want to develop the phase 1 here, so that the farmers market can start operating.
Turn it over
After
to
phase 1.
Shruti. You're out of time. You got to give Shruti a minute or two here.
Okay, so this is just the overall 3D of our massing, and then Shruti can take over.
Yeah, hi. So next slide. So yeah, so I tried to put on some goals for this particular site in terms of the strategies, which were like to understand urban thermal comfort, walkability, and air quality. One, because if we want it to be walkable, we want the streets to be comfortable, the temperature should be comfortable for one to walk. And yeah, so air quality, because like around Beaufort Highway, it's like really polluted. So we as a team, we were trying to study how to reduce that. So it's like better experience for a user to walk. So then with my analysis, I started to like understand the existing temperature conditions or the existing comfort conditions around the site. And as you can see, it's around 1 to 3 kilowatt per hour. So it's like really hot. It's not comfortable. And this is the farmers market area. And so next. So after our design, like because of this massing, we were trying to like naturally shade those pathways. As you can see, the gray patches around the site. So so we actually got some amount of thermal comfort, like without adding trees and landscape in itself, just because of the density that we created. I believe it will be like more comfortable. Then we can get the numbers like much lower once we add vegetation to the site. Second was walkability. Next. So currently, because the residential area is like not as much around the site, it's just mostly amenities. So the walking time to different amenities is like a lot, and people don't use the street for walking for the same reason. So what we are trying to do is like add more residential spaces. So like the commute to the amenity area is reduced, so people don't use the car, they can actually walk. So this is just the existing analysis as to how low the walk score is. As you can see, the numbers are like really low, 21 or 0 in this case. Next.
Okay, so final questions for you guys, that you guys have for the community is, do you want to read them aloud? Shruti, you've got the floor.
My questions. That's interesting because I wanted to know, like, so now that we are planning to add more residential spaces, so there might be like some spaces existing in Doraville where you have amenities closer to the residential spaces. So do the residents prefer walking, or still like even for shorter distance we prefer taking cars out there, and why though?
So also our question is that how do you envision the transformation of Beaufort Highway Farmers Market into a car-like retail commercial neighborhood? We typically, basically break down the huge building to a neighborhood and envision that the whole neighborhood as a farmers market neighborhood. So we want to know their vision about that.
So what happens to the farmers market in this situation?
We kind of think about farmers market. I'm going to show to this.
Well, I think I'll jump in. I mean, I think the idea is to just that all of the individual departments within the current farmers market could become small shops that are then lining, that are fronting a street. And you might have one street's the fish street, another street is the Russian export street, another, you kind of make it more of an outdoor market.
I have a question. I would like to know the income levels that are needed to sustain this, because it's a nice community, but people have to have jobs to sustain being there. And with that being said, is that going to also create income to live in the same space you work in, to where you can make a community like that work? Or is this going to be all outside money coming into this community?
I don't think we have an answer on that, but yes, we can certainly, there certainly are, we know that new construction is expensive. And I think part of what as I said at the outset, I mean, we're not costing things out, but we do know that the lower rise buildings can actually be quite more affordable. And if you are not providing parking and cars, that goes a long way to actually helping. I mean, estimates to some degree. If an average American is spending approximately $10,000 a year to own a car, $25 a day, if you don't have that expense, you can qualify for about $100,000 more in mortgage.
Okay.
And that may not solve the problems, but that's certainly
with that being said,
has a potential.
With that being said, okay, you've got to live within a mile of where you work. And in those areas, okay,
you have transit.
If you take the transit, how many people are you going to compete against that want that spot? You know, it's a community thing. Are you community building, or are you how can I say
I mean, if it's displacement, that's a fair question.
It's a big displacement, because there's a lot of under income people that live in these communities that, you know, yes, even some of the residents that are in here, let's just say they can't afford to live there anymore, because something like this, let's go to a tax base, it is going to nail them to the wall on their homeowners taxes. You know, this is going to definitely create value. And if it's not Homestead or somebody that was able to get in under the radar, but the tax scale is rising. So there's a lot of things to consider when doing stuff like this. And these are the very people that are probably the carpenters and builders that are building the place that won't be able to afford where they build. Just like, you know, a lot of the Ford union workers that strike because they couldn't afford the own cars that they build. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It's an important issue, no question. I do think the fact that there's no residents on the sites right now means there's more potential of gentrification of small businesses. And you'll see some of the strategies that different teams have come up with on that, but it's not direct displacement of residential right now. It would be allowing folks to significantly reduce the money that they're spending on transportation. Right now, folks in the lower half of incomes in Atlanta are more likely spending more on transportation than they are on housing.
That is correct.
And it's hard to know exactly where the numbers would land in 25 years. But yeah, these are very real issues. All right, I'm going to move us along. I would love to have more comments, but we've run out of time on this one. So I'm going to, Elham, please stop sharing your screen, and K-Bar. K-Bar and Mrula are working on the southern part of Buford Highway, from the border with Chamblee up to the new downtown.
Can you can see it well?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi everyone. Yep, like Ellen said, my name's K-Bar. We're working on the southern end of Buford Highway. You'll see in a bit, but what our vision was we were hoping to rethink the character of Buford Highway, so making it a lot more walkable and safer for pedestrians, and adding a lot more different types of mobility, retaining ethnic businesses and communities, since our what if actually was, what if we redefine what ethnic businesses and neighborhoods mean in the city of Doraville and on Buford Highway. So we really want to retain that culture, that ethnic influence that's been in the area. And while doing that, reinforcing the regional identity, we know that it's such a regional draw. We want to sort of add on top of that while making it more greener, a lot more sustainable, maybe a little healthier with our food environment. So moving on, some of the challenges we face are really low lack of density, a lot of parking lots, and the way the parcels are set up right now. And the way we're trying to sort of attack each one of these issues is taking in feedback from when we talk to you guys, as well as some of the things we noticed when analyzing the site is Buford Highway sort of acts as a moat, and it disconnects the two different sides of Buford Highway. Cars are going through really fast. It's a really popular bus line, but it's very hard to get on those buses because of how fast the cars are moving and how dangerous it is for traffic. So adding more connections, making it more safe, making it a lot more safe, and maybe using some of these empty parking lots as some of the connectors, as part of the connectors. Retaining what we can, so that includes things like Asian Square, which are individual condominiums, so retaining that sort of space, and building on top of the ethnic community centers that are already there, things like CPACs, which is for the Pan-Asian community, but also adding a community center maybe for the Hispanic community, also adding a stormwater park, and just a park in general that people can sort of organize themselves at, and have community events. And finally, reinforcing the regional draw that already exists there, while adding in things like a green trail that goes around our site that connects to the Peachtree Greenway. That gives just another option for pedestrians to walk around. And as you're walking around, you can see the urban farms that give back to the retail and residential people in the area. So with all those coming together, you can kind of see our urban framework, which densifies the area, adds more connections, makes it a lot more green, and builds on the community centers that we're trying to implement into the site. So one of the things that comes with that is sort of road diet onto the highway, because the way it exists now, there are huge empty parking lots, and it's really designed for cars. There's a very fast, thorough traffic on Buford Highway, and it's very hard to feel like a pedestrian or any type of mobility besides cars. So what we would implement is cutting it down from the 7 lanes that it is currently to 4 lanes, which would hopefully slow down traffic. A median in the middle to help with pedestrian walkways, and adding a bike lane, adding a dedicated bus lane because it's such a highly popular bus route, and having retail pushed up from sort of behind the parking lots, pushed up to the front, so you can have things like people sitting out at the retail places, and it's easier to get around from place to place, and a lot more density can be brought into the area while not having to think about parking as much, even though that's something we have thought about, which will come into play later. Some of the phasing that we've been thinking about as we implement this would be, so you have your existing conditions, then you build sort of on the side of the street, and you relocate the ethnic businesses that are in Buford Highway into those buildings. Then that gives you the opportunity to build on top of that, demolish what's behind it, and then also continue densifying, so adding more retail, residential, and that comes in forms of different types of retail and residential. And so that's how we would phase it. This is kind of our master plan. So as you can see, there's different programmatic ideas that we would have implemented that would really help to build on the ethnic businesses that are already there. So things like a food management station that would work with all the urban farms and community gardens in the neighborhood, so that you could bring in food waste, and that would go into the urban farming. You could distribute the food that gets grown there into the different businesses. Also just things for the community. So options like a playground that would be in the area, a daycare for a lot of the parents that are in the area, since there's also a school that's right there, the new school, and different parts of the park. So the stormwater pond, an orchard with like different just things to do in the park, building on top of the Hispanic church that's already there. And going around the entire thing is the green trail with parking at the beginning and ends of the site. So sort of, if you think of it as a regional draw, people come in, they can park, and then they can use the different modes of transportation to get around. So it doesn't have as much of an impact on the businesses, that rely on the people that are driving in from different parts of the region. And it makes it a little more it gives a little more connectivity to the people that live in the Northwoods district, since I know that was mentioned a little before. There are now, connections straight from there into the Buford Highway. You can hop onto the green trail from a lot of the places, from a lot of the houses in the
One more minute.
and this is what the density and the building types would look like, different types of buildings that we would have, fourplexes, live-work, apartments, and this is sort of how dense it would look in the context. Another picture of when you're coming in, this is what it would look like with the urban farm on the right, and a welcome to Doraville sign. And our performance targets were outdoor thermal comfort, rainwater harvesting, fresh produce generation, and walk score. Going through this pretty quickly, you can see that the existing condition is pretty bad for thermal comfort. And when you're adding in these denser buildings that add more shade, you're adding in a lot more trees, then all this shading makes it a lot more comfortable to be outside. There's a lot more local food production. So we actually were able to get 83% of local food production at our urban farming, as well as creating many jobs to maintain some of these roof gardens and community urban farms. Stormwater management, so the proposed stormwater pond actually is right where there's a dip in the contour, so it would be a very strategic place to put the stormwater pond, as well as having rainwater harvesting options right next to the urban farms and gardens that are on the rooftops. And that actually reduces the water consumption by 21% by using a lot of the rainwater harvesting systems that we plan to implement. And finally, the walk score currently is a 30, and with our new design, we are able to get it to a 75 because of how many different connections there are, adding a lot more amenities and making it easier to get around. So yeah, that's our proposal. And if you have any questions, let me know. I think one of the things that we talked about a lot in our academic review is the connection between the Northwoods district and the and our site, basically. So when you look at the master plan, sorry, just going back real quick. Yeah, when you look at the master plan, it kind of, I don't want to say encroaches, but you can see a lot of the buildings that are on that side. The bags become a lot more public with the green trail right next to it, as well as connecting to the public park and the community centers like the Hispanic Church and the Center of Hispanic Businesses. So I guess just thinking about how things we should keep in mind when we're looking at the intersection between the public and the private space is one of the questions I had. So,
all right, great. And I'll just say that K-Bar's one of his teammates is not here because of being made a finalist in a really important big deal competition out in Seattle right now. So, but great job, K-Bar, presenting. Questions and comments. I mean, the connection to Northwoods. What about the Green Trail?
I certainly like the way you layered it out and paid attention to the topographical maps and even added some jobs to be created in the community. I think that's important to keep workers in that area close by.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think thoughtfully put together, I think a challenge in doing something this cohesive is just all of the separate property ownership that you have along Buford Highway. It would be hard to assemble a lot of the property you need to get something that is, again, this cohesive and coordinated. But the idea of bridging Northwoods over Buford Highway with additional connectivity that could get you particularly to the new downtown with pedestrian, the walking trail there, I think is a really interesting idea.
I'm wondering, Matt, what you thought of the sequence drawing of phasing for, the example was Pine Tree Plaza, but it could have been any number of them. If you could go back to that, K-Bar, for a sec.
So Pine Tree Plaza is ours, and I think realistically, you probably are not going to be able to keep buildings open while you are constructing the new T5 compliant redeveloped property there. And so this sort of notion of trying to relocate ethnic businesses along Buford Highway, and because so many of the tenants in Pine Tree and well, speaking of Pine Tree here specifically are or meet that criteria, there's just going to need to be kind of a concerted effort with the new property as the leasing begins there to try and bring in that same type of tenant mix. But I just think given the topography, the spacing you're going to need for the logistics of the construction there, I'm not sure you'll be able to have a viable parking field for existing tenants while building the new buildings up on the road. But a really interesting idea, very creatively put together and worth exploring. And I think that phase 3 picture, even if it going from the first picture to the fourth picture doesn't look exactly like that, that does sort of paint a picture of what the future of Pine Tree Plaza may look like.
Mm-hmm. I think your comments are really important, and I'm kind of there are so many modular prefab kind of new construction systems that might be able to assemble a T5 building super quickly. I don't know. We can look into that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to know. I just know it's not as simple as the area you need for the new building itself, but it's the laydown area and the Connex boxes and everything that they need to have an active construction site while maintaining sufficient parking for the existing tenants, both from the standpoint of what they want to have, but then also and I haven't looked at it in a while, but I'm sure Doraville has a code of what are sort of the parking ratios you need to maintain. And I would suspect an active construction site would put us in violation of those. But anyway, these are all things that, we've owned the property since the 1960s, and we plan to own it for many, many more years. And we hope to work through this process there one day. So K-Bar, maybe we'll give you a call in a few years.
Okay, sounds good.
I just have a question about and it doesn't look like Shaw's here, but the going from phase 2 to phase 3, just kind of what are the challenges of taking an existing building and kind of leaving it as one story for a little while and then kind of adding extra floors on top of that? Is that is that typically or is there a way that's feasible, or am I misunderstanding the phase 2 to phase 3?
No.
There are examples where folks, I know of some that have absolutely punched columns. You basically have to punch new columns through. There's no way that existing one-story building was built solidly enough that you could just simply pile on top of it. But there are ways, even while sometimes keeping the retail open. I know of a one-story shopping mall that had 5 stories added on top of it while it stayed open. They extruded the atrium up. It's possible, but it's rare. Usually, folks, just the value of an older strip mall and the quality of that construction. If it's near it's kind of near the end of its lifespan anyway. Is usually the case that is kind of made.
Yeah, particularly given the age of this property, I would say that'd be the case here.
Yeah, and Matt, to your comment earlier, yeah, I mean, Pine Tree is overparked. No offense, I just haven't looked at it multiple times since I've been here. Like most of the other shopping centers, it's overparked. But anyway,
okay.
There are some, actually, the students have made reference to the stacking systems, and there's a brand new one. I feel like I'm promoting one of my former students, but he's co-founded a company called Stack, STAK, and they can stack 14 cars in 2 spaces going up 60 feet. It works like a carousel. It can be open to the public. it can be assembled in a couple of days, and it can be removed in a couple of days.
Huh.
So it really would be possible, actually, I think, at the demolition of the in the relocating, put in some of that stacked parking that temporarily works and then can go away. The STAK mobility, pretty
Very
cool parking
interesting.
system. Any other comments?
Just want to say good job, K-Bar. I really enjoyed your cross section of Beaufort Highway, just showing the 7 lanes of traffic as well as the amount of parking that can be found on Beaufort Highway. It really opens the eye and gets the conversation going as far as land use. So this slide was really good. It was really powerful. So good job.
Thank you. Yeah, that might be something we'll have to think about as well, because as we did the academic review, we were told this might be a little ambitious, I guess, for cutting down 7 lanes of traffic to 4 lanes for the speed and number of daily trips, I guess, that go down Beaufort Highway. So we'll have to work with that in mind, I guess.
This is the second one of these that has looked at an alternative future for Beaufort Highway. I know ULI has studied this on more than one occasion. And I haven't looked at that report in a couple of years, but is that informing at all what you've got here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we read it at the beginning of the class. That was one of the things we looked at. We haven't implemented anything directly from there. This is more just a road diet concept that has been applied to a lot of different streets. One of the ones we looked at was Lancaster Boulevard that Ellen recommended, but not from that specific ULI concept study, no.
Yeah.
Got it.
The challenge, I think, is that it's a GDOT owned road. And so there's a lot of challenges having to do with how GDOT evaluates a road. But there are examples where a city has taken ownership of a road, especially when it's passing through its downtown. And I think part of the idea of really slowing traffic down along Beaufort Highway for the section of Beaufort Highway where your new downtown is that it would help just reinforce the presence of a new downtown, the presence of, hey, you're in a walkable area, slow down, we're not going to let you speed here.
Did they do any sort of road diet on the section of Beaufort Highway near Norcross? Is it Norcross's downtown or Duluth?
Suwannee does have on-street parking. It's the one place that finally broke the GDOT did allow them to do on-street parking on Beaufort Highway. So there is some precedent.
Okay.
Yeah, and Steffi had put a comment in the chat about, connections to the neighborhood and stuff, and going back to one of the original questions, part of the challenge that we as a city run into constantly is, if you look at a map, we've got a lot of GDOT roads that have cut the city up into pieces. So anytime you're talking about connectivity and walkability and stuff, you then run into the wall of that is GDOT and and their priorities.
All right, I am going to move us along, and thank you, K-Bars. Please stop sharing, and I'm going to ask Sanjana and Avanthya to share their screen. We are now moving back up to New Peachtree Road, next to the from the MARTA station over to the Beaufort Highway Farmers Market. So go ahead, you guys. Uh-oh, what happened?
Good, we're good. Okay, yeah. Is it fine? Is it fine? Yep. So this is our site. Here is the new downtown proposed, and we are looking mainly at Peachtree. This is the topography on site, and there is a steep ridge that's going along this section. Our concept is that we would want to retain the first generation immigrant owners on Buford Highway who have these amazing restaurants. And we want to create a new main street, which is the Peachtree Road. And this would be for retaining the second generation of immigrants. And this street would probably be much more higher in rent as compared to Buford Highway. The way we want to do this is align a lot of new programs along Peachtree and activate it with a lot of active frontages. And this is how we would want to connect both of these streets. These show the important points, which is Marta Downtown Farmers Market, which is a regional destination, and the art center. And the orange line is the pedestrian connection that would go through these.
Strategy to secure the ethnic character is to enrich the area with uses that respond to the ethnic neighborhoods. And the program that we are proposing is to introduce new entrepreneurships like laundromats, barber shops, and daycare in order to attract new economy. To introduce arts-related uses like galleries and music instruments shops in order to emphasize the culture, and additional uses like co-working spaces, parks, and football fields in order to enhance this society and to bring the community together. Moving to the design, we are proposing networks that will connect the different characters in the area. Purpose of new Peachtree Road is to connect Marta with downtown and the assembly studios on the other side. The new Peachtree Road will hold the character of new economy and growth, and we aim to extend this character to the east side of I-285. The green path is the element that connects the two sides around Expressway, these two sides, and it's extending the creek trail through the whole length of our site. And we also aim to insert Buford's highway character of the first generation ethnic businesses to meet farmers market, and then extend it towards arts and entertainment center, the existing arts and entertainment center, to meet the culture's expression. This is our plan, the master plan. Starting off with the Marta, we are proposing a plaza around that as an extension to downtown. It is complementary to downtown new proposed plaza, and it does not compete with that. On New Peachtree Road, we are proposing urban plazas that can serve as gathering spaces along Peachtree. We retain the two big parking decks to serve Marta, and we are wrapping the one with residential uses. The park is an important part of our proposal, and it follows the reach, and we are also doing wider the bridge that connects the two sides of Farmers Market and downtown. As an extension of Buford Highway, we are proposing a pedestrian corridor that inserts the character, and around it, we are proposing ethnic cafes and small business. We are repeating the character of Buford Highway, and we're activating the frontage of Farmers Market that will be extended in order to connect with the existing arts and entertainment center. And there we are proposing the arts square that will be enriched with arts-related uses. This is our circulations plan. With the blue is the vehicle roads, while with the orange is the network of pedestrians. There you can also see the connection with the assembly area.
We have different kinds of public spaces. The park is the largest one. The one is proposed in downtown as the green. We have a huge plaza in front of Marta and some smaller plazas along Peachtree. We would widen the existing bridge connection to make it more green and pedestrian friendly, and then bring people through here to finally the farmers market. This would be a connection from Buford, again reaching to the farmers market because it's an important destination. And there would be a plaza in front of the art center as well.
And this is a close-up of a more detailed proposal for the the park, which is a huge element of our proposal. Around park, we are proposing factions related to the enhancement of ethnic community, and they can also be related with the park, such as the language center and the community center, which is a part of the park. And the park includes uses such as the water retention pond for stormwater management and soccer field that responds to the Hispanic culture, and also additional uses such as amphitheater and green lawn to host events.
This is a zoomed in section of the connection that would be next to the farmer's market, how that would navigate the topography and bring pedestrians below. This is our massing. All the yellow that you see is residential, all the red is retail. We are proposing a lot of new residential to come into the downtown. All the purple here would be arts related functions. This is a before and a after of the densification. You see these buildings are the new buildings of the proposed downtown. We want to propose housing on top of MARTA, some housing for MARTA employees, as well as senior housing, daycare centers, healthcare centers. This parking deck, which is existing, can be wrapped around with housing. This section is basically where the park is. On the other side of I-285, we again have the farmers market. This is the part which I showed a zoomed in of. There's a lot of retail that would happen along Buford, and people would come through this to finally go to the farmers market. These would be live work units, which would again bring pedestrians, all leading to the farmers market. All the purple next to the art center are art facilities, and here next to the industrial site, we would want to have our services such as waste management system, district energy system. All of these we're going to show in our next slides. We want to propose it as a scenic street since those are very narrow lots. Yes, so these are like the buildings in Doraville, and they have the scenic facade, which is used for shootings, but they are actually rentable spaces inside it. We want to propose these narrow lots to be converted into something like this, which can have this as a character. This is how we imagine those lots to be. This is the huge plaza in front of MARTA, which would be an extension into the downtown, which is at the southern end. This is the Arts District Plaza. It can have a lot of painting on the sidewalks, on walls to enhance the culture. These are the live work units that's at this section in front of the farmers market. This is a before and after of the densification. One of the targets we are looking at is noise pollution because it's really important to public health and it also decreases property values. We want to reduce 50% of the noise levels on site. This is how trees can be extremely effective in dealing with noise pollution. We did a simulation of this park for noise pollution. You can see here it's before adding trees. The levels are in red, which is really high levels of noise because of the highway right next to it. And once we make that into a green space, the noise levels reduce down more than half. This is about thermal radiation. Everything in yellow is high thermal radiation and dark pink and purple is shaded streets. Because of our massing, we want to make Peachtree really comfortable from walking and more shaded, as you can see here. These are some experiments with the stormwater that we are doing. And since we have proposed a retention pond, a lot of the rainwater from the roof can then be collected and be used back into the site. This is a conceptual diagram that shows that. And these are like some of the questions that we have for our plan, which is that we are proposing a lot of retail along Peachtree to attract new growth. So what exactly is the kind of retail that you would want to see? Secondly, we have a lot of residential proposed. So what is the typology of housing? Bigger units, small units, more multifamily that you would want to see? Similarly, one of the main things is to highlight the ethnic businesses and which is because that is the main attractor to Doraville. So what programs or functions do you think should be included to retain that ethnic businesses in Doraville?
All right. So we've got about 8 minutes for some questions and comments, answers to their questions.
I got a question. Your retention for stormwater, what's the 100-year flood plan on that, the depths and the overflow into streams after the filtration?
No, we haven't yet like
Okay.
simulated that part. Yeah.
Okay, that's very important when putting in retention ponds. You've got to think about that. Over here at Assembly, that they did a lot of work on that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
with one of our retention areas, that is also a wet stage or an aqua stage to where they can actually pull the water out. The water never goes into natural areas. It's stored in utilities we have underground so that they can build sets and reflood it using the same water. And is also designed for a 100-year flood, which we have put it to the test over the last couple months with all these rains we've got. And it performed beautifully with its bubbler system, and it percolates through the land to filtrate it. And it's, you know, even though we still got 2 years of site SIF, it's doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, right now we just put the location of where we would want to have the pond yet. Like as you can see in the metrics, we haven't simulated that. Like that's the lowest point of the topography. And so we imagine all the water would get collected there, but we haven't like detailed out as to how the channels would be.
Yep, that's very important. You got to kind of work backwards from stuff like that to find out where you're going to do stuff. But I like it. I mean, it's a great idea. And as far as the facade fronts, I think I brought that up in our meeting over at CERTA, that Assembly is going to attract a lot of attention from the film industry. And then the closer you have amenities for them to use, the more likely they will use them. And it'll also bring nice incomes to the property owners in those areas because, you know, they don't buck over spending $10, $20, $30,000 a day on a location. So if you've got one of those that they like and they use it for 3 or 4 days, you could walk away with nearly 70 grand in your pocket, you know, minus the taxes, of course. And, you know, and Doraville is certainly not going to buck over that. They're going to enjoy their cut of that pie too. You know, everybody walks away happy.
Yeah, and like these lots are actually have very less depth because of the railroad here and the topography here. So we cannot put like huge like multifamily blocks. So we thought addressing them as some liner buildings in this sense probably makes more sense for that section.
I mean, we have technology now to where our sound guys that they know how to filter stuff like that out, so that's not a big deal anymore.
Okay.
And plus, they go in between trains. The trains aren't going there 24/7. They're so on and so forth. You know.
Yeah.
So it's a good idea. It's a great idea.
Could
Thank
you
you.
all go to your the Marta Plaza? I
Okay,
thought that
this is
was so
a
one thing
reference
that
image for it. Yeah.
yeah, just to reference image. So one thing
Yeah.
I just enjoyed with all of your presentations, you know, walking is not seen as an experience, and we need to make it an experience. And I appreciated what each of groups have done. But you know, again, how can we show that it's okay and actually make it feel good when you're able to connect from one street to the next just by walking? And I think having something like this gives people the excuse to say, you know what, I don't want to get in a car. I'm going to take the transit because I know Doraville has this amazing pedestrian-friendly atmosphere and allows me to connect to the community. So I just thought it was kudos. I really enjoyed your storyline and the visuals, and I really enjoy how you put the different, you know, labeling, you know, especially for this slide, just helping people see what could be possible. So thank you.
And
Thank
that is
you.
a great idea to make a MARTA station a transfer point to a site, you know, things that you can go do, activities, like 5 Point Station used to be.
Yeah.
People would take the train just to go there and spend the entire night. If you make something like that around Doraville, they'll do the same thing. It's a basically a destination.
And one of your questions was about just, you know, what kind of housing types do you want to see around downtown and all that? And, you know, the answer that I usually give to people is, you know, I'm not picky. I mean, like everybody else in Atlanta, we're having a housing crisis and it's, you know, driving what we have. up and up, and so we need more. Not to say that I don't want to be a little picky about quality, but in terms of like how type and form, I'm really not picky. I mean, so.
Okay. Yeah. I think one thing, like with a lot of high-rise housing, we also proposed some missing middle housing, which would be these houses with like 8 to 12 units. But one thing pointed out in our academic review was that maybe that might get too expensive in a downtown core, and we should probably not propose anything of that scale, and it would all be like bigger blocks of multifamily.
I mean, I'm not wed to the 5/1 style everywhere. I think in an ideal situation where you're not as crunched as Atlanta is for supply, a mixture is important, just for the long-term health of a community. So I don't want to discredit it if somebody can make it pencil out. It does get a bit, there's only so much you can do to make those building types not start to look the same after a while.
All right. Great feedback. We have one last team. I'm trying to get us to stay true to our time, but we might run a teeny bit over. But so I'm going to ask Sanjana and Eventhia to close out. And I am going to, so the last team is working on the same site, but looking at climate change as an asset. And none of the team members could be here today. Two of them are also off at this big competition right now. So I am going to play the video.
Welcome to Doraville if they utilize climate change as an asset. This is Grace, Noah, and Nisarg. Our proposal is on the part of the site that includes the Buford Farmers Market to the right and I-285 bisecting almost in the center of the site. We also have the new downtown plan on the left-hand side of the site, and we have a few Kaufman properties that we cannot touch. We also have the Doraville MARTA station to the north.
When we first looked at the site, there were a few main things that we were looking at. The first being 3 zones, the blue zone being a multi-ethnic, multi-income community that is around the Buford Farmers Market, the red zone being a multi-typology mixed-use community, which is a direct downtown support, and the orange zone being a MARTA Gold Line destination in support of the MARTA station. The next things that we began to look at were the 2 major roads that run adjacent to our site, or even within our site, New Peachtree Road to the north and Buford Highway to the south. We are also looking at the connection between Assembly and the residential district towards the south side of the new downtown. The final thing we began to look at is when considering climate change as an asset was water reclamation. We are looking at the natural high points of the site, which is the most highest point in the metro Atlanta area, as well as New Peachtree Road being a ridge within the site and creating water flow across our site.
Some of the key components we are looking at in utilizing climate change as an asset is we're trying to look at how we can ensure outdoor thermal comfort and mitigate the urban heat island effect. We're also looking at how we can utilize urban farming and stormwater management and rainwater harvesting. Some ways that we are planning to implement these strategies are focusing on adaptation and mitigation. We are designing for the worst possible climate conditions in the next 25 years. So if we were to have a 100-year flood every 5 years, or if we were going to have very extreme temperatures in the summers and in the winters. So some of the strategies we're looking at include urban farming on the rooftops, specifically on Buford Highway Farmers Market, as well as on some of the other residential units in the design. We're also looking at harvesting water throughout the design, implementing tree and green lined streets where we will have bioswales that collect some of that water runoff, but also aid in the urban heat island and thermal comfort. We're also proposing a district energy system that will fund to different parts of the site through means of solar harvesting with photovoltaic panels and other energy sources.
This is a look at our illustrative master plan. The main things that we are wanting to illustrate here are Buford Farmers Market and proposing the green roof there, connecting it to New Peachtree Road. We are also looking at the water reclamation site based off of those water diagrams that we showed earlier. And the final thing is really implementing these more water reclamation zones as well as solar infill zones within the courtyards of these spaces.
So as we've been looking, if we do put a farm on top of Buford Highway Farmers Market, as you can see here in orange, we will be able to produce about 73% of the food needed for our development. We also, if we can apply photovoltaic or solar panels on the tops of these blue hatched buildings, we'll be able to produce a lot of energy for our site. And also with the urban farming, we'll be able to mitigate some of the heat gain in these areas. We'll also be able to utilize these rooftop farms to collect rainwater from each of the tops of the buildings and utilize the rainwater, the stormwater, and any other water runoff as gray water, and be able to filter and reuse that in other parts of the site, maybe on the rooftop farms, or slow down the overflow in the event of floods. This is a look at some of the bioswales that we're proposing on the green areas lining our streets, and we're hoping to have permeable pavement and sidewalks.
This is looking at our land use and the type of occupancies that we look to have within our different types of buildings. In the red, you can see a cluster of it towards the MARTA station there. That's really looking at creating office parks in these areas and having mixed use office. You can also see a little bit of office up in near the Buford Farmers Market supporting that multi-income area. In the orange, you can see high density mixed use with some residential, mainly taking up a lot of the site, but acting as downtown support. You can also see a different type of typology in the golds. Those are missing middle housing, which are mainly make up live work units as well as triplexes.
So like Noah said, this is a look at some of the building typologies we're hoping to propose. This is an axon of the triplex units we're hoping to propose. These are great for multi-generational families or even just multiple families in general. Some of the live work units we're hoping to propose, because we're trying to retain these ethnic businesses along Buford Highway, we're hoping to allow them to have that rentable space on the bottom floor that for their restaurant or their other service, and then have their residential space above. And then we have some of the more typical residential scale buildings with residential on top and office retail on bottom, and then a typical office building typology. This is a look at our 3D massing. As you can see, we have the new downtown here. We're proposing to increase the density on the MARTA station. And this is the Buford Highway Farmers Market, where we're proposed to put some stuff on the roof. So we're not going to build up any higher. We're planning to build up a little bit higher on the surrounding context buildings. This is a look at some of the streets that we're proposing. We're hoping to put Buford Highway on a road diet. So if you were to look at this as half of Buford Highway, it would be the same on the other half. We're taking away one of the driving lanes and proposing 45-degree parking on that street frontage to allow these businesses to have an easier access point to the people on Buford Highway, as well as slow it down to make it a little more of a clear delineation that you are entering the new Doraville downtown. And then these newer streets that we're proposing within inside the development would include a bike lane and some of that bioswale activity that allows the stormwater to be filtered and slowed down.
This is looking at the MARTA station and just a section through that, how this area might be used, and also example of the water reclamation part, putting it on display in terms of wetlands, as well as showing some of the filtration that happens and reusing it within the MARTA building itself.
This is the Buford Highway Farmers Market, and we're proposing a green space on top. So this would include some community gardening aspects that would supply the farmer market itself. Also a soccer field that would tie in with the soccer at the MARTA idea, and some other public use spaces. And the Buford Highway Retention Park, where you can utilize this at any time, but if there is a large rain or flood, this area would be able to collect that without impacting the other businesses. And so we have a few questions for you. Besides ethnic business retention, what is most important to you to have in the new vision for Doraville's downtown? We can't wait to hear from you, and if you have time, we'd love for you to fill out this link. Thank you.
All right, so I'll leave that up for a little bit and try to move this guy. Yeah. So if anyone wants to use use your phone and go to their QR link, Noah and Grace would love some feedback. And they've been working with NISARG also on the project. So a couple of the questions, I think, I want to go back now at this point. Oh shoot, it's a film. It's a little hard to go back, but let's see if I can get us back to, the roads, the angled parking, as an alternative to sort of assuming there's a lot more transit, people are not driving quite as much. So you're getting some parking, but not as much parking as what used to have. So as another strategy of being able to really help pull more development right up to close to Buford Highway. Any thoughts about that strategy?
I definitely enjoyed, again, being able to, it slows down and lets people find, because there's a lot of options on Buford Highway. And so if you are not sure where something is, having that slow lane where parking is on the right allows you to take that almost small downtown feel in your choice decision, as well as trying to find your location. So I just thought that was great. And, again, even them just saying, just imagine this mirrored, I'm like, beautiful. I love it.
Actually, you're right. Yeah, it's horrible to be driving alone. If you are driving alone and trying to look at which side, is it in that strip mall? No, is it not? No, read the signs. It is hard. You really have to know where you're going. I'm also wondering sort of this idea of then building on top of the farmer's market roof. Any thoughts on that? Putting a farm on the roof and the soccer field, and then there is a 20-foot drop from New Peachtree Road to the ground behind the farmer's market. So Noah and Grace are sure that they would still be able to have all the truck loading and everything happening underneath it, no problem. But
No, I mean, I love the idea, but that was going to be my question was, I forgot how much of a drop exactly that was, and if, their loading would still be able to function like it does.
Yeah.
No, but with that in mind, no, I do like that idea, because yeah, it is kind of like, if you're walking on New Peachtree, like, oh, there's the farmer's market. How do I get there?
Right.
Question for rooftop farming is buildings to the east and the west in the sun and their height. Sometimes that kind of stifles growing.
Yep. We'll have to check that. There is also the weight issue. I mean, farming's not, it's heavy.
Yeah, dirt does
That
weigh a lot.
soil's very heavy. But
Yeah,
but
I
there
mean,
are a lot of places that have rooftop farms now. So have to just figure out how to do that. I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
interrupted you, Matt.
No, I mean, it's a different sort of consideration, but our office building, we put solar panels up on the roof, and I know one of the things that gave us, as a owner of the building, concern, and I think that would be a similar concern for something like what we're talking about here. And I'm assuming we're talking about the existing facility that they currently operate out of, which has other tenants in that shopping center, is ongoing maintenance of the roof once something's installed up there. Just looking at it on Google Maps, it looks like it is an older roof system, probably doesn't have a warranty that you would worry about voiding if you put stuff on top of it. But even still, you've got all the different kinds of rooftop equipment and penetrations that you would want to be careful of, but you probably could plan around. But also, when you start getting into issues of roof leaks, which happen on just about every building everywhere, the sort of the everything after day one of having that garden up on the roof will need to get it'll get more complicated from there. That seems like the kind of idea that if it is built into the construction of the building on the front end, it will work a whole lot better than retrofitting an existing building.
Great points. Absolutely. Good points. Any other comments for this proposal? I'll try to go back to their master plan. Well, or here we sort of have the massing. Building types.
Well, they had me when they said missing middle, so I was very happy to hear that.
I mean, it is still a question. Are the land values so high that missing middle is really not going to pencil out? Or
Valid.
what were you saying, Will?
Oh, just to your point, it's valid. Again, we agree, like, we need to make sure the project pencils, and so, as we look at density, better density, and even more density, like what makes the most sense and what could be best supported with the future, with current, past, current, and future projects.
I know. I mean, these are school projects. We are looking 25 years ahead, and nobody has a crystal ball. The economy could completely collapse, and we'd be lucky to be able to get just a couple of triplexes built. Who knows? But any other comments for Noah and Grace? If not, I'll open it up to general comments. I thought the section, their MARTA section was also really quite, where is that? So I'm zooming through there. But just the views of Assembly would be fantastic, above, essentially above the MARTA, but on the MARTA land.
Not to mention what Chris said when we were touring the site, like that top penthouse would be a view of downtown Buckhead. So you would get the views of the whole area.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. Any closing comments, advice, as the students have about a month more to work? General observations?
I think really thoughtful and creative ideas. Impressed by everything I saw. I think, and it's the very difficult problems to solve, but the challenge of separate property ownership, to me, as I've thought many years about the future of the corridor, is one that is going to be a difficult one to solve. And if there are ways that there are, going beyond sort of just the planning level, but if there are things that the city should explore or DeKalb County should explore as ways to help bring about change at a bigger level, I think that would be really important as you think through the future of all these different ideas.
No, I totally agree. And I have sort of told the students that they have paid some attention to the parcel lines in some places, and they know that I've told them, all right, post midterm, we're really going to see, okay, you've sort of got an idealized vision now. What happens to it? It's going to get kind of quirky, and probably in a really good way, if you now actually really do think about it parcel to parcel and in a more incremental way. Or yeah, you know that what you're presenting would require some extremely large deep pockets to come in, and public or private or somehow both,
right,
to view change. There are some pretty cool examples of property owners getting together and recognizing that it's in all of their interest to increase the walkability, and their property is worth more in exchange for getting higher zoning. The zoning already is not a hurdle, but no one wants to be the first person unless they know their neighbor is also going to advance the walkability. So White Flint up in northern Maryland is a really pretty cool example. But so there's I think there are precedents, but that's in a more affluent area too.
I think that as Buford Highway changes, and particularly some of the different renderings that were shown, and that impacts some of the people that, it's several different individual parcels in a row, each with their own curb cut. If there are changes there that impacts, it sort of might force people to be a little bit more collaborative with one another.
Yeah. Anyone else? Any more? Any feedback? What should the students be looking for on they're about to start a week spring break? What would you hope that they would just use that break to look at more carefully, not specifically on this site, but just look for examples of creative economy kinds of environments, examples of arts districts, examples of community-driven urban farming, or just spend a lot
I
of
feel
time eating out on Buford Highway all week.